Good morning. My name is Martin Baric. I'm a co-founder and lead architect in Zero Architecture, which is architectural company focusing on sustainable architecture in the real world. And I'll talk today about the architecture, urbanism, sustainability, and what we can learn from these principles in meta worlds. But first, why is it so important to start thinking about the building industry? So this is the pie chart of the industries and their greenhouse gas emissions or CO2 emissions. For each chart where you can see, oh yeah, here, the construction, it's for 13% of it. But it's not entirely true because the building sector is kind of linked to all of the sectors, maybe except of agriculture. So if we would rephrase this diagram, we will end up in something like this. So the building operations and constructions, they go for 37% of global CO2 emissions, plus another 10%, which are industries which are linked to the building industry. And not only the CO2 emissions, which the building industry is providing, but it's also linked and responsible for half of the material extraction, half of the energy consumption, and third of water consumption and waste generation. And of course, we are overpopulating as a planet. It was counted that in 2050, there will be, I think, 10 billion of inhabitants in the planet. And also, we are moving towards the cities. So the 70% of the population will be actually living in the cities. And for these people which will actually born, we would need to build more and more buildings. For your imagination, it was counted that to 2060 we would probably have to build, as per square meters floor area, 230 billion square meters, which is equivalent of New York City every month for next 40 years. And so we will build, but also we have this problem that the Earth overshoot date with day when we as mankind are using all of the materials which Earth can produce in a 1 year cycle, and it's slow, it's still sooner and sooner. So we actually now currently need 1.75 Earth for what we are doing right now. And what we are doing is probably not really working because the global temperatures are still increasing and increasing over last decades. So where are we going to live as a mankind in the future? Well, if you would Google cities of the future, you'll probably end up with these very cool and nice pictures of very bright future, a lot of greenery, you know, sun, high-tech buildings. But if we would have a closer look from our from our point of view as an architect, then you end up with the buildings which are very expensive. They cost probably a huge amount of the material to build. And still you have plenty of solitary buildings which are nice individually, but the connection, it have to be done with some modern highways for modern cars or some high-speed trains which travel above. And all of this we would have to build with the material, so the consumption of everything will increase. And where we are going to build the cities like this? Are we going to build them on the greenlands, or are we going to demolish the cities which we already have? Both doesn't make sense. So what we are going to do if we live in the cities which actually look like this currently? We have them, they are actually linked to our history, society, they have their own cultural heritage, protection, and there is plenty of material which was already used. So then we started talking not only about the CO2 emissions which are created, but also about the embodied carbon, which is already inside of the materials which were used. That means the CO2 which is created with the creation of the material, transportation, and actually building it. And also the cities today is not really working for our life. You know, we have bad traffic situations, or the cities are considered as urban heat islands because there is just concrete and stone, not really greenery. So to be in the city in the summer can be pretty nightmare. But still, the cities are the most sustainable place where we can actually live in. This is Chicago City, and we have the same diagram, but one consider CO2 emissions per square mile in this case. So you can see the city center, it's terrible. But if you would rephrase it and count it per household, then you will end up with completely opposite situation. And how come? Because everything in the city is all together. You have mixed use, you have place where you live, when you work, when you study, you go for exercise, you go to restaurants. You don't need to commute that much, and the transportation generates plenty of CO2 emissions. So, and actually the difference is almost 5 times less. So basically the cities are good for us, we just have to amend them in a better way. But it's not really working, or it's not really happening, because Dubai is one of the youngest cities in the world. Well, not the history of Dubai. Dubai is an old city, but the modern Dubai was built last 30 years. And you end up with that future city. You know, you have plenty of high-tech buildings which were built individually. You have to have them linked in some sort of uplifted highways for modern cars. But to live in the city is pretty nightmare. I don't know if you visited Dubai, but to walk around the city, it's not really possible, actually. You have to drive everywhere. So how to achieve better cities in the cities we actually have? Well, we should follow the concept of the compact city, or the city of the short distances, which was created in Paris a couple of years ago. And that means that you have a city where everything is linked together. You know, you can work, live, go to the restaurant, go to the university, and everything should be done in 15 minutes distance by walking, cycling, or using public transportation service. Yeah, and for that, we need architects and urbanists. And sooner and better, because plenty of the solutions that we can incorporate into the design, at the beginning of the stage of the designing, you have plenty of solutions, and it costs nothing, because we're just designing. But when we start building, you know, the cost is increasing, and the sustainable solutions are decreasing, because everything you try to do at the end of the stage costs a huge amount of the money, and you don't have that many possibilities, because the city or the building was already built. So to change things, it's not that easy. So that's why we, as an architectural company, we come up with this framework, which we are using for our own projects. And now I'll talk individually about all of the like these 3 pillars and 7 elements that we're using, and I'll try to link them to the metaverse as well. So first, longevity. What we are trying to achieve, or we should achieve, is to build the building which is not with one purpose only. For example, this is a temporary courthouse building which was built in Amsterdam. And I think it was because of the renovation of actual courthouse. And the reconstruction was done, so this building is not needed anymore. So it's actually going to be replaced to a different city, which will be used as a university research center. And this is something that I can see parallel in metaverse, because you have a plot, it's very limited. You can build only one building, let's say, but you would like to use it as a gallery, and then as a disco dance floor, and then to have an apartment to hang around with your friends. So to design things that it's very easily to be changed for your purpose. The second is location. Location is key for the architects. Because we are always trying to respect the surroundings, to push genius loci of the place, to make better surroundings for the people. And we can increase this with the mixed use, so you have everything all together connected. And this is actually a good example of city of the short distances. Again, linked to the metaverse, well, you have the plot, which are more expensive because neighborhood is much more fancy. So to create very nice mixture of the use of the houses which are built there, it's perfect, and you can help each other. And this is actually Vauban in Freiburg, Germany. That's area which was built from old military base. And actually there are apartment buildings where you can buy an apartment, but you shouldn't have car because there are no garages, parking spots, but people don't mind because you can walk almost everywhere. Well-being is crucial because why are we building buildings? We are building buildings for people. We are, as a mankind, we are spending 90% of our time inside of the buildings. So the buildings really affect us. And there were studies made which we know that better building, the better design helps people to be happier, to be more productive, to be healthy. And for example, this is the interior of Pasona headquarters building in Tokyo, Japan. And when they were designing the building, they come up with the solution, while we don't need to use plants as a greenery, but they are planting, lettuce and tomatoes. They are using edible plants, which are actually used in the canteen, and plants are taken care of by the employees, which brings their mental sanity to the normal stage, which is an amazing concept. And again, with the interior, we can have very interesting link to the metaverse as well, because we experience with our clients that they don't really have the virtual imagination. We can provide them with the floor plans, with the renderings of the space, but they still cannot really imagine what we are designing for them, which we are paid for. So to be able to, to walk them through in the virtual reality, and not only, because that's already possible, but to be able to do that across of the globe, to meet in the metaverse, to design their house, that would be amazing. Biodiversity. We always have to think that if we are building something, we take something out of the planet, so we should give the planet back as much as possible. So to create possibilities for everything alive. And not only that we can have a green facade or green roofs, which decrease the temperatures inside of the buildings, but there can be also used as vertical farms inside of the cities. And not only in some modern buildings in the city centers. This is actually a metallurgical factory here in Czech Republic. So it can actually look like this. Energy. This is something which is already happening. Our legislation is pushing us for less energy consumptions. So that's a good thing. We should follow that. And also we should try to build the buildings which are able to produce their own energy. And the best way is if they can produce the more energy that they actually consume, so they can send it back to the grid. This is a Canada building from US, and this building is actually producing more energy than it is consuming. Water. With water, it's very simple. We should circulate water as much as possible inside of the building. To use rainwater for showering or washing or for the gardening, and then to use gray water, which is wastewater from the showers or the washing machines. And with that water, we can actually wash again or flush the toilet and then send it away. And in the end, materials. As I said, materials are critical because we are losing the raw materials. Plenty of materials was already used for another constructions, so we should try to recycle, reuse everything as much as possible, or to use more sustainable materials such as wood. And this is actually first skyscraper which was built purely from wood in Norway. And for us then as an architect, this is pretty game changer because that's 18 floors and our legislations would stop you somewhere here. So, to manage this is impossible here. So I think this is the future. And actually there is a Vietnamese architect which said the bamboo is steel of the future. And I believe that. And also, we have limited plots, limited materials, which is also parallel to the metaverse, With the rendering engines of the servers, which, generate the meta worlds that you can see, are also with limited capacity. And so you cannot build everything. You should be humble in the metaverse as same as we should be humble in the real world. So even though we live in cities like this, bright future is not that far and not impossible. We actually can live in cities like this. We just really have to start thinking differently, and as an individuals, and not always think that the technology will, deal with this itself. The technology can help us, but we really should start as individuals, as mankind, and just work with the technology, and we can live in a solar punk future and not only leave it to utopian anime pictures, which are cool, but this is not really real. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, I'm hoping there are some questions from the audience on some of that. There's a roving microphone. If anyone has a question, then hand up. Okay, I have a question.
I think this was too analog. This is very digital crowd.
Well, it is what it is. I have a question. Like, I share a lot of the kind of energy behind the visions that you're presenting. That picture of London, like if London could be like that, I might even go back and live there, maybe, okay? What do you feel are the biggest areas of blockage that slow us down at achieving that, like real world blockage? I don't mean metaverse blockage, I mean real world blockage. Like where are the sticking points?
Well, okay, I'll stay in Prague because I know the Prague environment. We're designing here, so I know the legislation. I cannot really respond to the UK, but sure. I think the problems would be similar, and that it's very strict legislation. It's very. You have the Prague is UNESCO protected, so you have a heritage department which is hold us tight. We cannot really, you would like to do green roof, but you cannot because, we would damage the roof area of the city. And also, like the hygienic stations, they don't really know how to deal with the rainwater or grey water. So basically, they require us to flush toilets with drinking water because we have plenty of drinking water in Czech Republic. But that's nightmare, and you always, with all of the things that you would like to do, especially with the wooden skyscraper, it's possible. The material can bear it, but here, because of the fire regulation, we can only have three floors. So in everything, you will basically bump into some barrier, which is mostly legislation. Right. And also, plenty of things they require, the overall urban planning, because the sustainability in the city is possible, but you have to think about in bigger areas. You cannot really go with the solitary building. You can have amazing sustainable building somewhere in the woods because it can generate its own energy, etc. But it's usually, it have to be somewhere far because, it's not shaded and there is a perfect orientations towards sun and these kind of things. In the city, this is impossible. You were trying to increase density, to build as much as possible in a very small area. So the sustainability is possible, but you have to have someone with a bigger picture in their minds, and that would be the government, or the urban planning offices. But then you have this bumping towards the politicians because they need to have fast forward results, and architecture is long term. It's very long term. Like to build something, it can take 12 years.
Right. And like following on from that, you talk about urbanism. You're at an Ethereum conference, which is all about decentralization.
Yep.
So I'd be interested to know your thoughts about kind of how the decentralization movement that's happening in a kind of computer network perspective, blockchain type things, may influence our physical world decentralization. Like, in some ways, do we need cities anymore if people don't need to come together to work together because everyone's working remotely? So I'm interested to know how you feel about this, well, or whether you believe there's any influence from the decentralization of technology that's going to result in us all going and living in the countryside?
Yeah, so, well, we can work individually or from long distance. Right. Especially COVID era learned us that it's possible from everywhere. But how much you work? 8-10 hours a day, and the rest you need to sleep somewhere, you need to do groceries, you need to do some sport activities, you will probably go somewhere. So then you would have to sit in the car and drive somewhere for 2 hours to have a nice evening with your lady, you know, to drink. You cannot actually drink wine because you would have to drive back. So
you grow the grapes and make your own wine.
Okay, good luck with that.
And grow your own vegetables. Okay, so...
No, but the key is that in the cities we can live together and we can have everything we need together. But maybe what we can, well, maybe should be decentralized, and this would be anarchist idea, but maybe the government is the issue. Because we can live all together, even in some sort of decentralized organization, but with the governments, that's usually the problem. Or at least from my perspective, because as I said, they only see the goal and maybe they want to be elected in the next round.
I'm glad you've talked about that and not me.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe someone can save you from my annoying questions. 2, 3 now, wow. Where were you guys when we needed questions 2 minutes ago? Now we're here.
Thank you for being first. Yeah, I would agree with you on the regulation part. I'm coming from Graz, which is World Heritage too, so you can't do anything what you're complaining about. The thing what interests me when you do the designing is actually if you think about a country like Ukraine, which has to be rebuilt, where a lot of structures are destroyed. How would you do it, and what materials would you use in this real-world setting to kind of rebuild in a sustainable way?
Yeah, this is a great question. So basically, because there is a lot of waste now in terms of materials as well. You know, it was bombed, it's lying there. So basically, the thing that I will start is to collect everything and find out what material are we dealing with. We should start thinking about the waste as a source, not as something that we try to get rid of, but to start to using material as a source of, you know, structural materials of anything else. Then we start, you know, that would be the circularity, and the circularity is the only way how we can actually survive on this planet, because the linear economy is proven it's not really working for us. So I would go for that, you know, to find out what we are working with and start with the proper urban planning. So of course, probably the streets stay, so they will start reconstructing each buildings. But still, you know, then you can build the building from the scratch. You don't really just replace what was there, you know. Then you can start putting the mixed use, you know, to create better environments, start to creating cities of the short distances, as I said. And now they have the possibility, because unlucky of the war, you know, they have to start from scratch.
Okay, I think we have time for 1, maybe 2 more questions.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about what you were saying before, Chris. Like, I'm with you on that. I was working with a couple of anonymous big automotive firms. I'm not going to mention names, but anyway, like what came out of that, it was like talking about the convergence of 50,000 satellites giving internet in the next 10 years and other exponential technologies colliding. So thinking about the future of mobility, what came out of that was this kind of movable spaces that will assemble into cities as needed through time. So certainly, why cities? If we think about like humanity as a multiplanetary species going forward, a couple, maybe hundreds of years. But anyway, rambling, just rambling. I'm gonna pass it on.
Okay, maybe time for 1, maybe 2 more questions. There was a hand up over here.
Thanks. I just want to come back on the topic of cities versus decentralization. And I was reading something recently about that maybe because you mentioned about cities being efficient, and that's very clear and very interesting, but you didn't go into maybe the differences between super large cities and smaller cities. And I was reading some interesting article about the efficiency of kind of a network of smaller interconnected cities, maybe, you know, by train. And I was wondering if you have any thought on this, like what would be kind of the optimal size of city, and could that maybe be a key to thinking about like decentralized while keeping some kind of urban living which is very efficient?
Yeah, so actually this was already measured. The optimal size of the city is 2 million inhabitants. So that's why the cities as Vienna or Copenhagen are so amazing and considered as the best city in the world. Or Prague, actually. Actually, I read the Prague transportation system was the best in the world, or it is best in the world. So the smaller cities are better, but then still we have London, 20 million, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Tokyo, 38, if I'm not mistaken. So, well, we have big cities, and I think I will try to create the clusters which cover these 2 million. So to create even the big cities as several smaller cities which are easier for people to live in, to working. And I think that would be the future, or the solution, because we have the cities which are huge, and we cannot just, you know, cut the half of it, or, you know, to cut it into pieces. Literally, I think we can do it as, you know, an organization of the city.
Okay, I think maybe it's time to wrap on this one.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Martin Baric.
Thank you.